Hello and welcome. I'm Lanre Lasisi and I'm glad to welcome you to the Gavel. Now, this week was a very eventful one at the National Assembly. The 2015 budget was laid before both chambers. And once again, it was not laid by the President, but by the coordinating minister for the economy. Now, this is one point some lawmakers were not pleased with. But in any case, the budget was laid. Now, the week also witnessed more defections as lawmakers changed political affiliations and alliances. Let's start with the budget.
After the incidents that came up the last time the House of Representatives were to resume plenary, many people were not sure of what to expect as the lawmakers resumed from their recess. But all was normal at the gates into the complex. This time, the Speaker of the House drove in without being hindered. Some hours later, the Minister of Finance was seen leaving a meeting with the Speaker.
How did it go?
Excellent.
Is it about the budget? When are we expecting it?
Yes.
When are we expecting it?
Tomorrow.
Okay, what time? Okay, have you agreed on the benchmark price?
No. Don't worry, the budget is tomorrow. Go ask the Speaker, they are all there.
Okay.
Yes.
When the Speaker arrived at the chamber, it was straight to the letter of Mr. President.
In consonance with the provision of Section 81, Sub 1 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria 1999, I write to request that the Honorable House grant the Honorable Minister of Finance the slot of 11 a.m. on Wednesday, 17th December 2014, to enable her lay before you the 2015 budget estimate. I'm cognizant of the fact that the budget estimates are being presented before the passage of the 2015-2017 MTEF. This is due to the extraordinary global circumstances that confronted us in the latter quarter of the 2014 fiscal year. As you know, the first MTEF with a budget benchmark of $78 a barrel was submitted to the National Assembly by 30th September 2014. And the discussion on the MTEF and budget construction based on those estimates began with the 11 committees of the National Assembly. However, shortly after that first submission, oil prices began to fall precipitously, leading to a revision of the oil benchmark price in the MTF to 73 per barrel, which was resubmitted to the National Assembly on 18 November 2014. Following this, the decision of OPEC at their meeting in Vienna on 27 November 2014 not to cut production to support the price led to further precipitous fall in the oil price to below 70 per barrel.
The minority leader, however, moved a point of order on the matter, wondering why the President won't present the budget himself. The Speaker then ruled on the matter.
Mr. Speaker, I remember last year, I believe Mr. President was supposed to be traveling out of the country, and therefore he did not personally make that presentation. And the argument was made, and it remains the same, Mr. Speaker, that we do not want to set a precedent whereby year in, year out, this institution will be undermined and perhaps maybe a legislative aid or a PA to Mr. President will come and present the budget. Yes, Mr. Speaker, it can be argued or it can be read that the Constitution says shall cause to be laid before the House. But when you read the Constitution and what is intended, and international best practices all over the world, and the provision of our privileges, the privileges provision about usages, precedents, and customs, then, Mr. Speaker, I don't think we should encourage such, whereby just anybody will come to present the budget of this country to this institution, a joint sitting of the National Assembly or separate sitting, as the case may be. Let us not break tradition.
To my understanding, there is nowhere where this provision envisages that or suggests that the President must personally present those estimates to the Parliament. Of course, traditions are expected to be respected in parliamentary practices. But a situation whereby the public officer concerned has been given discretion by the Constitution, and he chooses to go the other way, and probably decided not to take advantage of the platform of the Parliament, where he's expected to make his budget presentation and address the nation. we must not be seen to be the ones forcing such a public officer outside the provision of the Constitution to say you must come and perform such a function. Therefore, on the basis of this, I hereby rule Honorable Femi Bajabiamila, Minority Leader, out of order.
With that out of the way, the Deputy Majority Leader stood to move a motion on the same matter. That also was challenged.
This House suspend all relevant rules to allow the Honorable Minister of Finance to lay the budget, which is the 2015 budget, before this House. The budget estimates of 2015 before this House. Tomorrow, Mr. Speaker, my highly respected colleagues.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker. It is my understanding, and it is the rule of this House, that we must approve the benchmark before the presentation of the budget. That has always been the rule. And I don't know when we have not approved the benchmark, MTEL has not been approved, and we are saying somebody is coming here, not even the President, the Finance Minister, to lay the budget. We are going against the tradition of this House, and I believe it's something we should look at carefully.
I believe that we have received the MTF. We're going to refer it to Committee on Finance. That should not stop us from receiving the budget tomorrow. We first deal with the MTF before attending to the budget subsequently. Please, that is my plea. I beg of you, we have received the MTF this morning, the revised MTF. Then we take the budget tomorrow and then pass the MTF first before attending to the budget.
That was resolved and agreed on. The letter was also received in the Senate. The Senate President, David Mark, read the letter to the lawmakers without any incident.
The very next day, the coordinating Minister of the Economy was back. At the Senate chamber, she laid the 2015 budget estimates before the lawmakers. Having completed the brief ceremony without making any speeches, she made her way to the House of Representatives. Speaking afterwards, the minister said the budget is one that points to the fact that Nigeria is a non-oil producing country.
We have a budget expenditure of about 4.3 trillion, revenues of 3.6 trillion. We've tried to make up for the drop from $78 a barrel to $65 by raising non-oil revenues. Okay. This budget points to the fact that this country is a non-oil country, and I think we want Nigerians to begin to think of the country in that way. Okay. So we have worked very hard with the guidance of Mr. President to move on non-oil revenue. So we have closed many loopholes and leakages. We've tried to broaden the tax base. We've speeded up audits. We've looked for everywhere. We've closed some exemptions. All of this will bring additional revenues into the coffers. We've also worked on expenditures. On the expenditure side, in the in the short term, we're going to look at things like administrative expenditures. Equipment will not be able to buy next year. Okay. Travel and training will only be inside the country, just on exceptional basis. If someone is paying for you, will you be able to go out? Or if it is a critical government directive.
Some of the lawmakers who spoke with Channels Television are optimistic that the National Assembly can pass the budget before the 2015 general elections.
I'm not too sure that the National Assembly, both House and Senate, would be able, within the remaining part of the year, to commence work on this budget. I mean, like I said, the best we can get is that by Monday, copies become available. Monday will just be a few days to Christmas. So both the House and the Senate are going to adjourn for this period. But I think that as quickly as possible after the new year, the very first thing that the National Assembly would do would be to consider the budget and pass it. Because don't forget, elections too are very close. The first elections are 14th of February. So within the first 1 or 2 weeks in January, I expect that the National Assembly should be able to deal with this budget and pass it.
It just means that we're going to do a lot of work, dealing with the MTF concurrently, dealing with the budget, But I'm pretty sure that everybody appreciates the peculiarity of the present circumstances, and I think we will be able to deal with the situation with that consideration at the back of our mind.
The real work of budget consideration begins. But before we go to the budget itself, there's still the issue of the MTEF. The medium-term expenditure framework and the fiscal policy paper are documents that are supposed to inform the content of the budget. It would appear that both documents have come at the same time. But what we will do as a parliament would be to first consider the MTEF, because the MTEF would determine the parameters that will be used to assess what level of revenue should be accruable to the country and how we want to spend it. So we're going to deal with the MTEF first, and after we've done that, then we will deal with the budget estimates as presented by Mr. President. Now, in terms of timing, I'm hopeful that we'll be able to achieve this before the general elections. I say I'm hopeful. I'm not quite sure that we'll be able to do that. But I can assure you that the Parliament would work as hard as we can without compromising quality. We will not sacrifice quality on the altar of speed. We're going to do what is necessary to ensure that we have a workable budget given the circumstances of the global economy as far as oil prices are concerned at the moment.
These are difficult times. Nigeria is involved in difficult times at the moment. Therefore, we have to improvise. We'll take extra caution, we'll take extra care, we'll work extra hard to ensure that we do justice to this budget.
We've always insisted on having a budget presentation as early as possible, maybe like September. And if we had it in September, we will have had at least about 3 months to do the necessary work on it. And perhaps it can start operating from January 1st. But the way it is, the earliest possible time will be March, considering the fact that there's going to be election too. So the earliest possible time we can have that budget passed will be in April.